Hey, Such Links here. I actually kind of like wanted to touch on the topic of leftist unity because I've noticed that like left unity, aside from the dictatorship of the proletariat, the debate between like the DOTP and socialism, there has been even a subject on leftist unity, um, and I wanted to provide like my opinions on leftist unity, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. Hope you enjoyed the video. One thing can we get out of the history of the left is that there's always been infighting. There's always been debates. There's always been infighting, and there's always been like some sort of what is it? Kind of like tensions between a certain type of communist versus a certain type of communist, another, or a communist versus an anarchist. Um, and I know this for a fact because I am a neo-Trotskyist, and you probably seen my latest video about the dictatorship of the proletariat, how that is indeed a kind of like an example of, I guess, leftist debate, or even not even just leftist debate, but just straight up communist debate between one communist to another. Um, kind of giving out onto the history and certain quotes and yada yada yada, about theory entirely. And there's always been some solution to this, to unite us, both communists and anarchists alike. So that way we can unite ourselves and then overthrow capitalism entirely. A black and red alliance, essentially. The left unity. The leftist unity entirely. And I just kind of want to give my opinions on this because that's also been a hot topic on LeftTube. So I actually kind of want to give my insight onto this subject. So you may have saw Paul Morrin's video and even Reeducation's like recent videos, basically sarcastically saying, "Oh guys, infight. Oh guys, believe into this certain idea, like, and denounce everything what the other person says, yada yada yada." And one thing I can actually understand by this is that most of the time they usually just mention like certain types of communists. They usually either mention like Trotskyists, neo-Trotskyists, left communists, council communists, and many more ideologies that infight entirely. Hell, even in Paul Morton's video, anarchists. He even targets anarchists, sarcastically, of course. Sometimes it's not even really kind of that. And even then, they even go ahead and denounce what we should call as what is socialism and what is the dictatorship of the proletariat, because apparently to them that's meaningless, which doesn't really make any sense at all. Especially kind of rich coming from Paul Morrin because he is also a Marxist-Leninist, so he should know that kind of referring to Marx's works is indeed as important for us communists. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like useless when we're actually trying to organize a revolution. But it's still onto the tensions that we have to like consider entirely as Marxists. So, by this, what is my positions on left unity? My positions on left unity, I am a neo-Trotskyist, and that being a Leninist, and I do believe in democratic centralism under the Vanguard Party. However, that being said, that does not mean that Leninism does not support leftist unity. It does. And I'm going to say right now, even as a neo-Trotskyist, and even Tony Cliff, Max Chapman did agree on to some form of unity of the left. I am going to say I am pro-left unity. I am. However, the thing I disagree with is kind of Paul Morrin's and even Reeducation's way onto achieving that leftist unity, and we'll get onto it just in a second. I honestly think that the best way to achieve a leftist unity is to have discussion, is to have debate. We can't just put aside our differences entirely and then expect us to just put aside our differences to to do X amount of things, or to overthrow X government, X state, to establish a workers' state into X country, and then make the revolution permanent until capitalism is defeated, and then we'll all eat cream cheese together, or eat bread together, and cop gold, and we all share gold in the streets. Um, I don't think that we can do that. I honestly think the best way we can actually achieve onto a leftist unity is by discussion, is by debate, and is by essentially by the popular vote, instead of just putting aside our differences. What we have to do as leftists, we can't just put aside our problems. We've seen onto the history that we can't just do that. What we have to do is discuss them, work together despite our differences. Not put aside them, but despite our differences, and then discuss our differences. And then once by that, we can actually somewhat achieve to a unity by discussion. And then we discuss, and then we come to a compromise, so that way we can overthrow capitalism entirely into a democratic means, in a centralized democracy. And that's exactly kind of what Leninism implies of democratic centralism under the Vanguard Party, that being the party of the proletariat. Now, for certain anarchists, you may, or that haven't even read Lenin, you may have heard that essentially the Vanguard Party is essentially controlled by a certain amount of class conscious individuals to lead the proletariat and guide the proletariat. No, no, it's not. It is the Vanguard Party itself is the party of the proletariat. It is the party of the proletariat, where the proletariat themselves organize and decide based onto the actual vote and based onto the majority of that vote. And what democratic centralism does provide is that exact same way for the proletariat themselves to actually organize themselves under a organization. So an organization of the proletariat. It doesn't even have to be a political party. It can just be any kind of organization whatsoever. For the proletariat to organize themselves, a militia, a party, not really a union, but even like some form of organization whatsoever, they can organize themselves within that, and that could be considered as a vanguard. It is the party of the proletariat, that being where the proletariat themselves organize, and democratic centralism provides that example, or like provides into that format, where the proletariat themselves can actually discuss, they can vote, and they can take action based on the majority vote, and based onto the popular opinion by that vote. Considering the entirety of the amount of the members in that said vanguard. So, by this is the more democratic way. And you can't say that Leninism in itself is, well, democratic, because it does promote democracy. It does. Sure, it may be not decentralized, but it is indeed centralized to an amount, and involving the entirety of the proletariat under an organization that is supposed to be the party of the proletariat. Even Marx even advocated for a vanguard party in Manifesto of the Communist Party, and even Critique of the Gotha Program, and even addressed to the Central Communist Committee. He does advocate for a vanguard. That, but not in the same way as Marxist-Leninists or Stalinists would put it, as run by intelligentsia, appointed by a certain individual. No. Lenin actually denounced this way of thinking. He had an idea that it's supposed to be the party of the proletariat in a democratic way. So, anyways, let's get down by this. So I honestly think that the best way we can do it, based onto this kind of merits, is to follow these merits, and so that way we can actually organize ourselves under the Vanguard Party, and then actually discuss our problems, discuss our positions, and then we can come to some certain compromise, or until the debate ends, and then we can vote onto what way we can take action, and whatever the majority vote says, that's exactly what we do, based onto the popular opinion. And that's the best, and I feel that is the best way for us to organize as the left entirely, and based onto our principles and our goal of what we want and what we think is the betterment of the proletariat and what is the betterment of the proletariat. So, but yeah. Anyways, we're talking about leftist unity, at least on LeftTube, and kind of at least comments on certain videos. So let's get started. Hi, Social Links here. I just got finished watching Paul Morrin's video, or at least rewatching it now. for like the 33rd time. One thing that Paul Morrin does, I actually kind of think is pretty funny. Not exactly funny, but pretty, kind of funny. Is he sarcastically says, "Oh, don't join a party," and that like workers of the world don't unite, or they can just relax, and they don't join a party, don't join a union entirely. Basically, being in a sarcastic manner, in a sarcastic way. Um, and one thing I've noticed is that this is mainly a target like towards you know, neo-Trotskyists, left communists, counter-communists, Trotskyists entirely, and even some form of anarchists as well. Um, as of a way, so that way they can just essentially oppose against like the sectarian form of the left, and I am against sectarianism. I am for sure. Sectarianism is a curse under the left, and and we can like evolve ourselves to just get rid of it. And I mean, you can see that we have. If you look at SPUSA, that yeah, we have been trying to get rid of sectarianism, and so far it's been working. But we do know that there's a certain kind of leftists that stick onto that sectarianism. But that's the problem. That's the kind of problem. The best way to defeat sectarianism is not putting aside our differences. It is to work despite our differences, to discuss our differences, to essentially debate our differences. Because here's one thing: infighting does not mean debate. I mean, most people usually use debate of leftists, calling it leftist infighting, but it really isn't. It is just debate. It's leftist discourse. Infighting, I would say, is actual, leftist like duking it out on each other. For example, when the Free Territory of Ukraine worked with the United States and raided against the entirety of the proletariat into those lands, stole grain from them, and then basically said, "Oh, we're for the people," yada yada yada, and then the Bolsheviks came down and basically screwed them over. I'd say justifiably. So yeah, you can say that is like, I guess, leftist infighting by definition, like actual leftists duking it out and fighting each other, like based on political principles. So yeah, um, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You never do. What we should do is organize ourselves into one organization and discuss our problems. We shouldn't act on our own merits. A bit like based on without like even the consideration of other people as well, other leftist ideological followers. What we should do is consider all of them and actually organize ourselves based onto that and discuss our problems entirely, not just put aside them. Because if we put aside them, then there is going to be some kind of conflict. The good example of this is the ban on factions in 1920, where the Marxist-Leninist faction did take power bureaucratically after the ban on factions, not based on the popular vote, but based on minority vote, which basically took control out of the more popular factions, that being the Leninist Marxist faction and the Bolshevik Leninist faction in the Bolshevik Party. Although most Trotskyists wouldn't even say that, I would say, oh, the ban on factions was necessary. I disagree, because yeah, no, having the ban on factions basically kind of destroyed the entire point of democratic centralism. It destroyed the entire point of it. Um, but so by this, we can even see that if we don't have some way of actually organizing, then there is going to be some form of leftist infighting. Or we would have some form of bureaucracy rising in to the worker state, and we don't want that, now do we? No, we don't. But the best way we can actually do this is to discuss our problems, discuss our differences, and actually organize ourselves. And this is one thing that I guess Paul Morrin gets wrong, at least towards the end of the video. He's basically implying that we should put aside our differences entirely, and that we shouldn't really have leftist infighting. That's the thing. We shouldn't have leftist debate or something like that. That's the thing, though. We do need it. It's absolutely necessary to need it, because if we just didn't have it, then we would overthrow the capitalist government by now. But the thing is, the fact that we are trying to put aside our differences, but we're still infighting either way, or there is some form of bureaucracy rising into political parties, especially in the United States, as you can see with Communist Party USA, Party of Communist USA, Revolutionary Communist Party USA, People's Liberation Party, Party of Socialist Liberation, etc., multiple American socialist parties, you can even see, yeah, there is a bureaucracy rising because of the lack of actual discussion, the lack of actual democratic centralism into that party. So, what we can do, actually, is not be so sectarian. What we have to do is actually organize ourselves based onto the actual merits. Sorry about that. DVD fucking thing. Yeah, I'll just hold on and get rid of it. Be right back. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, still trying to got a pretty weird setup, so you might hear just had to get rid of the DVD player. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that we have to discuss our differences. We do. We have to debate. But that's the only way we can actually have a leftist unity. If we're just put aside our differences, then there's no point on to even actually having leftism or even having some form of the party or to organize ourselves in the first place. But we do have to do that entirely. We do have to discuss our differences, and we do have to do that. And that in itself can be a leftist unity, where we debate and we discuss, and then we come to a compromise, and then we come to an end of that debate or that discussion, and then we vote on what is to be done or what should we consider certain amount of things. And that's exactly what most parties do. That's exactly what most parties and most organizations do. The problem is that sectarianism is very rampant. But that's the thing. But the thing is because not onto the actual organizing, onto actually discussing because of differences, but because of because we don't. So the best way we can do that as actual Marxists and actual anarchists or communists, whatever leftist ideology you believe in, is to discuss our differences entirely. So I am pro on leftist debate. However, I am also pro on leftist unity. But the thing is, when we actually discuss ourselves and then we actually come to a compromise and then we come to a vote based on the popular vote and the majority of the opinion, that in itself, I think, is a very healthy leftist unity, a very healthy one as well. Where we can organize ourselves based on to discussion and to an actual organization of the proletariat themselves. So, yeah. That's kind of at least my comment on Paul Morrin's video, and yeah. And as for unions, as he goes an example, where we should join a union, I'm going to give my take on unions. And I'm going to say, based on my opinion, and even when you can see onto the actual historical merits of unions and the actual functions of them, don't join unions. Just don't join unions. The thing is with unions, is that it caters to the bourgeois establishment. It does, and it's always and even then it's only limited to a certain amount where it actually has to essentially cater to some bourgeois official and cater to some bourgeois idea, based upon to certain amounts and certain ideas, uh, by the bourgeois status quo. So don't organize yourself into unions. I honestly think that unions or organizing a union is essentially bad. And even then, we have lawyers to basically actually ask you onto actual legal problems. The thing is, those same lawyers still have to cater to some bourgeois branch or some bourgeois bureaucratic establishment, to make sure that they don't actually organize, that they don't even organize. Hell, even then, you can even go back to what he says about Congress and cultural freedom, that, yeah, or continental reform, or whatever it's called again, sorry, I have to rewatch it again, but where, yeah, even the bourgeois essentially spies on other political organizations and even unions, to stop them from doing that. And that's exactly, and the thing is with unions, they have a direct branch to stop them from organizing. And that's why unions are not essentially good to actually join. Even the IWW, organizations like that, it's not essentially good because, yeah, they cater to the bourgeois establishment. And that's exactly what the problem was for the Spanish Revolution, during the Spanish Civil War. And this is where I actually agree with Vladimir Lenin and Leon Trotsky onto the thesis onto trade unions as well. So, Yeah, I would say even then, as the left entirely, and even not just as my opinion, but just on historical evidence and based on the actual organization of unions entirely, don't join one. Don't join a union, dude. Like, um, I'm not being ironic here. Don't join a union. I mean, sure, it could cater to, it could help like some format of the workers, but the thing is, our point is not to just help the workers. Well, we are trying to help the workers, but we're not trying to help them based onto the actual establishment. We're trying to overthrow the establishment, and unions is not good by doing that. Sure the ideal of it is to seize the means of production, but has that done that yet? No, it hasn't. And will it do that based onto the actual merits of bureaucracy and the branch of the United States government, and based upon even social democratic nations that even that where trade unions are essentially mandatory, but are still spied on based on a bureaucracy of the bourgeoisie. No, like even then, we cannot really organize ourselves into unions, and we can't essentially organize ourselves into any form of system where it caters to the bourgeoisie. So, I get the best way we can actually organize ourselves is to a reading group, a discussion group, a militia, or a political party that essentially doesn't really need a bourgeois branch to spy on them, really. um, and essentially has a system where these problems don't really have to exist based on to the actual like membership appliance system where all members have to vote to whether accept a member or not. And this is kind of like a good format for democratic centralism. And even the Bolshevik Party had this some form of system, and even then it worked to actually overthrow the czarist government. So yeah, don't. So yeah, I'd say join if you're gonna actually organize yourself. Join a militia, join a reading group, join a newspaper program, join a study group, and join a political party, a socialist political party, of course. Um, so that way we can actually work on to actually getting our goals to set up a worker state, and then socialism, and then communism entirely. So yeah, but like I said before, I am pro on leftist unity. However, I do not feel that unions is the best format, and I don't feel that just putting aside our differences is going to work entirely. The best way we can do that is to actually discuss our problems and then come to a compromise and base onto the popular vote. Hello. Yeah, just got done watching Re-Education's video, and I can actually say most of the time I actually agree with him. He's not even really talking about like leftist unity as like a way as like Paul Morrin did. Oh, we can just put aside differences as much, but he is saying that we cannot debate in bad faith. He's saying that every side has a bad side and every side has a good side. And I can actually agree. I can actually confirm. Yeah, every side has a bad side and every side there is a good side. For example, in Marxist-Leninist theory, there is some good aspects onto it. For example, shit. Fuck. What was it again? Hold on. Yeah, pause the video. Yes. Yes, dialect, language. That's actually kind of a good side between like the actual Stalinist theory entirely, dialect language. And even then, in under Maoism, there's even like contradiction production is indeed pretty good. Although I will disagree that like I feel that Mao's interpretation of contradiction production is or contradiction entirely is very different than Marx's theory of it, but it's still all right nonetheless. But yeah, there is some form of good side and bad side in every single form of the left or any form of tendency within the left entirely. The problem is what I disagree is that what re-education does imply here is that so based on this we shouldn't debate. We shouldn't essentially debate. We should have a conversation instead. I disagree. The best way we can actually essentially talk to each other and actually talk to each other as comrades is to debate. Like at least to our revolutionary goal into some form of organization is to debate and is to essentially have some form of discussion entirely under some form of centralized organization entirely of the Vanguard Party. Now keep in mind, re-education is an anarchist, an anarcho-communist to be exact. So like he does not believe under the Vanguard Party, and he's even made a video against the Vanguard Party. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the Dirtbags versus Wolf Schools video that he actually the recent video that he's actually made about it. So I guess really the main thing I disagree with here is that, again, we cannot just put aside our differences. We can't. And if you can see the actual history of the entirety of the left, we can't put aside our differences. The best way we can actually discuss our problems, or at least no, to have a unity is to discuss our problems, is to have a debate, and then come to some certain form of compromise or some form of essentially idea of what we need to do and actually vote on it, and then based on the majority vote take action upon that. That is already the best form onto some form of leftist unity whatsoever in entirety onto the left, and why we should organize ourselves based onto that revolutionary goal that you do talk about, re-education, is that what we need to do is to definitely organize ourselves, but not to put aside our differences. I'd say that we have to work despite them and discuss our problems and discuss our entire thing. Not just put aside them, but discuss our problems through debate and debate about what the USSR was or what the Vanguard Party's intentions were, and whether or not if unions are actually sustainable, or if X thing is good for Y, etc. Right? This already is, I would say, the best way we can actually discuss, is the best way we can actually have some form of unity of our left and actually come to a goal to overthrow capitalism as a whole, and then finally set up a worker state, and then to socialism and communism, both being a moneyless, classless, stateless society entirely. And I've already discussed about that I already discussed that, as of the worker state, socialism, and communism, featuring Communist Cola, as a response to Finnish Bolshevik Heikim and Premier Lyles. You should probably see that in the right there. So click it if you want to check it out. But yeah, anyways, continue on to my thing. So by this, I honestly think that what we can do instead is not essentially put aside our differences, but to organize about them, or organize ourselves, despite the differences, so that way we can actually discuss them, and then whatever majority opinion that we come to, we can actually come to that conclusion. So so by this, the best way we can actually do for us as the left is to discuss our problems, is to debate, and is to have a conversation, so that way we can come to some form of compromise, or at least learn something from that certain debate, and then change a few minds, actually, because I do know for a fact you can change minds through debate. You can, and even the person you're debating with can actually change their mind as well on how they think of the world, especially in the left, because you should. And another thing I want to add on, I agree with re-education system, is that we should not debate in bad faith. We absolutely shouldn't. We should debate in good faith, and we should debate entirely as of a way where we can actually organize, where we can actually do something productive, essentially, and to discuss our problems entirely. And that's the best way what we can do, right? So what I think the best way we can function ourselves is through a democratic means, and through a centralized democracy where we can actually discuss our problems under some form of organization. Even about the USSR is even more healthier onto a leftist unity than by any means of just putting aside our differences by far. Just wanna for sure address that entirely. So what I have to say is that I mostly agree with re-education here. However, I don't agree with majority of its conclusion. Like I said before, the best way we can actually have a leftist unity is based onto the principles of our own actions, based onto our own principles of debating, and to essentially have a discussion in good faith, and to debate each other. So that way we can come to some certain compromise or learn something, and then see each other as comrades, and then actually work onto a revolutionary goal. based on debate, and that is the best way we can actually have a leftist unity. So let's say we have a vanguard party, and there's a Stalinist faction, a Trotskyist faction, a left communist faction, an anarcho-communist faction, a anarcho-syndicalist faction, or like what else? A what is it again? It's like an anarcho or or like an anarcho egoist or an egoist faction entirely. So that to overthrow capitalism, and then we can see that as a way to debate each other, and hell, even more than that. So yeah, one thing that we can concur is that what we definitely need is some form of way to this is for some way to unify the left, but I don't think putting aside differences is the best way. What I think the best way we can is to just discuss our problems and is to debate, and that is the more healthier way entirely. Not to put aside differences, but to work together despite them entirely. So yeah, that's my take on it. Yeah. So yeah, if it that's a kind of why a little bit why I disagree with re-education. But again, I mostly agree with him. But again, we can't just put aside our differences. We have to discuss them, and the best format of that is through democratic centralism under a vanguard party, that being the party of the proletariat. Yeah, hey, future links here. Keep in mind that by the time when this video is uploaded, re-education did make it essentially an apology video for, I guess, the drama that he started. But as from what I can tell, he didn't really start any drama. I mean, there's maybe a few people that disagree with his video, but that's not essentially drama. And I just kind of want to commented on that. Anyways, future links out. In conclusion, what we actually can come by here is that the best way we can actually have a leftist unity is through centralized democracy under a vanguard party. And although there's certain anarchists and even some form of like Stalinists and Maoists that disagree with my definition of the vanguard party, the point is of this video is to debate. So if you disagree with me, I'd like to hear it. But yeah. Anyways, the point is here is that if we are to have some form of leftist unity, then we can discuss our problems, and then we can come to a compromise or learn something based on our discussion, and then vote on it based onto the majority opinion, and based onto that majority opinion, we can take action upon that entirely. So in conclusion, be pro left unity, but don't be in some form of left unity where we can put aside our differences. Rather, a leftist unity where we can discuss our problems and come to a compromise into some form of way. To not work together despite our differences, but to work together, not to work together to put aside our differences, but to work together despite them. Work together through a democratic manner and through discussion and through the majority opinion. And based on the majority opinion, we take action upon that. Okay, so that is the more healthier way, where we can actually have a leftist unity instead of putting aside differences. Because if we were to just do that, then entirely we would just have another bureaucracy, and we would have another essentially leftist infighting again. We would have another ban on factions, and we will have another bureaucracy rising into our worker states, and another revolution being betrayed, based upon the entirety of the system. Factions and discussion is the best format for our leftist unity. Without it, we can never liberate the proletariat. And as communists, our main goal is to have a liberation of the proletariat. Thank you for watching the video. If you like this video, then hit the like button down below. I'd really appreciate it. If you're new to my channel, hit the subscribe button. I'd also really appreciate it. If you're new to my channel, of course. And yeah, like I said, you can watch my other videos if you like. And especially watch more entirely of the videos where I talk about capitalism entirely. So maybe you can educate yourselves. But anyways, yeah. Thank you for watching the video for sure. Yeah. Socialist Links is out.